Hello, Sean and I are here to tell you about the hybrid webinar that the Yorkshire Plus Region Learning Network is hosting. Sean, as facilitator of the webinar, please would you introduce yourself?
Thank you, Carla. My name is Sean Adair. I'm the Superintendent of the Derbyshire North East Circuit and the Deputy Chair of Sheffield District. But for the purposes of this seminar, I'm a learner like everybody else.
Thanks, Sean. Sean, we've got a webinar planned, hybrid worship. What's the webinar going to be about?
Okay, so we've spent a lot of time sharing in recent months about the different ways in which we've tried to engage with online ministry and the challenges of that and the lessons we've learned along the way. But what we're now needing to look at more carefully is how do we sustain an online ministry alongside a physical ministry and alongside a ministry to those who can't engage in either physical or online, who need us to be engaging with them on the phone or by post, all kinds of different ways in which we have to connect to a whole audience. The question I heard recently from Neil Hudson was the question we now ask ourselves is this person online or not online? And that's actually a huge question that's just come really to the front in the last 9 months. But particularly now, as we're moving forward as church leaders, how do we hold together those different demands or the different outputs of ministry? How do we hold them all together? How do we resource them?
Thanks, Sean. So will anybody be helping you to facilitate the webinar?
Yes, I have a number of people who I've found really helpful conversation partners, people I've learned from over the last couple of months and people I've heard about. And so in particular, I'm calling upon my dear colleague, Brian E. Taylor, who is an Anglican minister in the same area that I work in here in North East Derbyshire. And Brian E. has been the sort of go-to person for a lot of Anglicans and for me too. And so she's going to be sharing something of her own model, what she's learned along the way. Alongside that, we have our own Wayne Grucock, who of course heads up the 12 Baskets Ministry and the Worship Cloud. And he's been sharing with me along the way what he's been trying out in his church and what works, what doesn't work, and something of the tension between circuit and local church and matters of quality. And that comes through then in the conversation in the last part of the seminar, of the webinar, which is with Phil Rowland, who comes from Sheffield Circuit. Phil has a particular concern that things are done well, and I agree with him on that. And at the same time, James Morley, one of my superintendent colleagues here in the district, who is particularly concerned about not trying to hit everybody, but perhaps meeting particular niches. And so those sort of questions that will arise from those different conversations.
Thanks, Sean. That sounds both fascinating and exciting. I wonder though, who is this webinar aimed at? Who's it for?
I guess it's aimed at people like myself who are wrestling with those questions of how do we possibly resource these different ministries. Let's face it, before the lockdown, we were all busy just doing the physical stuff. But now we've developed this whole new online ministry, and we have a sense that we can't just let this go. We can't just let it drop. So how do we hold what we were doing, the physical ministry, alongside the online ministry, and the ministry to those for as long as this pandemic continues, and for those who were already feeling isolated anyway because of life-limiting diseases and conditions. So how do we hold those different outputs of ministry? Ministry's been reformed here in the midst of all of this. What are we learning, and how can we help one another on that journey? So the webinar is for those who are wrestling with those very issues, just like myself.
Thanks, Sean. So do you need to have any experience to join the webinar?
It would help if we had some understanding of words like Zoom and Facebook Live and YouTube Live and things like that, so we were able to have a conversation around those online ministries. I think we're all quite conversant with the physical ministry already. But other than that, just come with a readiness to learn and a readiness to engage and to ask your questions and to share your experiences.
Sounds really exciting, Sean. So just remind us, when is a webinar happening?
Right, so it's on Guy Fawkes Day, Thursday, the 5th of November, and it's from 1 o'clock to 2:30.
Brilliant, Sean. Thank you ever so much. We really are looking forward to this really important webinar. And if you're interested in joining us, please do book on via the link provided.